In section 4.1, what we're going to start to look at are what are called probabilities. When we think about probabilities, we think about the likelihood of something happening. Well, what are these things that are happening? We're looking at experiments, and we're going to specifically look at an event that's happening, whether it's I'm tossing a coin or I am rolling a dice. Some kind of event is happening, and the question is, what's the outcome of that event? The outcome is if I'm tossing a coin, whether or not I get heads or tails. If I'm rolling a dice, the outcome is what number I'm going to get. And it varies. So these terms you'll need to kind of understand in order to be able to answer questions in the probability chapter. So, in the first example here, we're going to determine the outcome of each of the events. So tossing a coin. What are some outcomes you could get for tossing a coin? Well, there's really only two outcomes you could possibly get, and that's that you could get heads on your coin, or you could get tails. For your single die, when you're rolling a die, you really have 6 options. You could get the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Drawing a card from a deck of cards, it could be, there are a lot of choices. It could be the Ace of Hearts, the King of Hearts, the Queen of Hearts, so on and so forth. There are 52 options there. Randomly selecting a student and asking how many siblings they have. They could have none, they could have 1, they could have 2. Eventually we'll get up to a number where, let's say, a maximum of, let's say, 6 siblings. Could be more, but probably not. So then we want to get into some more terminology, and this one is very important. What is a simple event? A simple event is something that can only happen exactly one way. So a good example would be, let's see, rolling a 4 on a die. There's only one way to roll a 4 on a die, and that's just to roll the number 4. So let's take a look at a couple examples and determine whether or not they are simple. Tossing a coin and getting tails. Is there only one way to get tails on a coin? Yes. One side is heads and one side is tails. There's only one way to get tails. So yes, that's a simple event. Drawing a card from a deck, and then the actual event is drawing an ace. Well, is that a simple event? Or is there only one ace in the deck of cards? And the answer is no. There are actually 4 aces in a deck of cards. So there's 4 different ways to get an ace, not one. Simple event means there should only be one way to do that. Let's take a look at the third one here. Drawing a card from a deck of cards and drawing the Ace of Hearts. Is that a simple event? Yes. Because there is actually only one Ace of Hearts in the deck of cards. So there's only one way to draw the Ace of Hearts from a deck. Let's look at this last one. Rolling a die and getting an even number. Well, how many even numbers are on a die? There's a 2, 4, and a 6. Well, that's more than one way to get an even number, so no. This is not a simple event. There are 3 even numbers. However, if I gave you something like rolling a die and getting a number divisible by 5, that would be a simple event because there's only one number divisible by 5 on a standard die. It's just the number 5. This next term that we're going to talk about is, again, super important. It's called the sample space. We're going to use this a lot. The sample space is where you list all the possible outcomes that you could get. But notice they also use another special word, is that it needs to be a set. When we use the word set, we use, when we talk about sets, we use these little things called set braces. So basically we're going to take a list of all the possible outcomes and put them in little set braces. just making a fancy list of all the possibilities. So in this first one, when they say determine the sample space for each of these events, they're just wanting us to come up with a list of all the possibilities and then stick them in these fancy set braces. So, what are all the possibilities? What's the sample space of tossing a single coin? Well, there's only two options if you're tossing a single coin. There's the option that you could get heads or you could get tails. And again, let's make sure we put those in set braces, and that's what is considered our sample space. Those are all of our possibilities of what could happen if we toss a coin and we stuck them in little set braces. Next one, rolling a single die. Well, if we roll a normal single die, there's 6 options. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And again, we got to put these little set braces around it. Once we do, that's all we need, and that's called our sample space again. What if we want to toss 2 coins? What are all the possibilities for tossing 2 coins? Well, both coins could be heads. That's one option. One coin could be heads and the other could be tails. But it could be that the first coin is heads and the second is tail, or it could be the reverse. The first one is tails and the second one is heads. Or it could be that both coins lastly could be both tails. And again, those are all your options. We'll put those in little set braces, and that's what we'll call our sample space. Now, if